Since it's 7, do you want to start letting folks in?
Yeah, let me do one last thing here, and then you can grab folks. Just trying to get. Could one of you actually, oh yeah, never mind. Okay, I'll do this one thing. Okay, go ahead, you can start letting people in. Hello, welcome to our monthly meeting for the Seattle Special Education PTSA. Things are feeling a little bit last minute on my part. I'm Cheryl Lynn Crowther, and I am the president of the PTSA. Getting back to everyone. I'm going to give it a minute or two as our audience, as our group of people come together. Let's see. Working on sharing my slides. Okay, here we go. Just a quick. As I said, I'm Cheryl Lynn Crowther with the Seattle Special Education PTSA. I am the president this year. And the first thing I want to ask people to do is to pick their language in interpretation. We have ASL, Spotlit, and we have Spanish, Somali, and Vietnamese. And new, thank you, Zoom. You can also, in the transcript, or not transcript, when it says, looking down below on what the line reads, you can choose captioning. You can choose translated captioning, if that's helpful. Okay, it's about 3 after, so I'm going to go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. And I like to think of the land acknowledgements as that was a nice thing several years ago when we started doing land acknowledgements. There is absolutely an opportunity to move beyond just acknowledging that the majority of us, or at least the people like myself who live on this land, do not have rights to this land in terms of the history of our country. And I wanted to share that the Seattle Audubon is actually returning some ancestral land, or has returned ancestral land to the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. So where I am sitting is, and the Snoqualmie Indian tribe is one of the Coast Salish peoples who have been here time immemorial and are very active and growing despite much of what they've been through. You can learn more. You can look at Pay Real Rent, and you can also look at the Snoqualmie Tribe's website. And a note, we know that this is the last week of Ramadan, and want to extend our celebrations and best wishes for a happy Ramadan and happy Eid Mubarak. Ramadan Mubarak, I believe. I was looking for the...
Uba can correct us if we got it wrong.
Yes, thank you. Everyone is welcome at our meeting. If you are a member, we will ask that you take part in our voting if we have business that needs a vote. You can also join, and you can join for the standard costs that we have. We have zero cost as an option as well. We want to make sure that financial is not an issue when it comes to joining the PTSA. And if you have the opportunity, you can also support this PTSA. As an organization, we don't have a school base since we help support families of students with disabilities who are in a variety of school in schools all across the district, in more than 100 schools. One of the big things, and we'll be talking about this later, is what we do with the guide for families, and donations would help with that. I'm going to go through tonight's agenda. We've had our open. Our meeting agreements would be coming up, and it says, and who we are, and I was trying to decide where to put a placement about board members' names. Most of us, and board members, if you haven't, would you change your name to show that you are part of the PTSA and your role? I know we have our co-secretaries, we have our head of the dyslexia committee. I'm trying to think of the other people that I've seen who have joined since I started talking. Believe we've got our inclusionary committee lead. We're going to be hearing from Dr. Ivory Stewart with the Seattle Special Education Department shortly. The Padlet, which is just the commercial name of a resource to be able to type notes. The Padlet is available to you to be able to ask questions, or you can ask them in chat. I'm trying not to be distracted by the things that are popping up on my screen. And then we'll have a legislative advocacy update from our Vice President and Chair of Legislative Advocacy, Yana Parker. And then today we really also want to spend some time discussing the failure of a bill regarding ending isolation. And there are several issues around why it failed. And we want to talk about it because it feels like there's some counter advocacy going on. And we want to get some feedback from our community. I did mention donations. We are going to take a look at our budget and talk about a couple of different opportunities that are coming up. Give Big Washington, which is going to be a big fundraising opportunity. That's going to be, you're going to see a lot of coverage around that. I want to let you know that Seattle Special Education PTA is taking part in it, and also a couple of other opportunities for fundraising that we'd love to get some feedback on or participation in. Then take a look at upcoming events on our calendar if time allows, and just getting through our minutes for the day, our votes, doing some of the business of being a nonprofit. I am not seeing, I don't have this open in a way where I can see everyone who's attending. Can I get a volunteer to read our meeting agreements? Katie, I'm going to ask Katie, KDD, would you be willing to do that?
Yes, I can do that. Thanks. Meeting agreements. First, keep the focus on students and their needs. Be mindful of airtime. Respect each other and each person's ideas. Discuss ideas, not individuals. Keep yourself muted unless you are speaking. State your name before you speak. Speak slowly to allow interpreters to do their work. Advocate for those that are not here.
This is Cheryl Lynn. Thank you. And I also forgot to mention that for our interpreters and for our members and attendees who are deaf or hard of hearing, please identify yourself when you start speaking. It helps with the whack-a-mole of trying to find who's speaking on screen. So just something as simple as this is Cheryl Lynn. And the speaking slowly part. We will interrupt as need be. Any of us can get going at speed. I feel like I'm working at a very slow speaking level right now, and I want to make sure we're accommodating as much as possible. oh, I did have this. Just a quick look through our board members. I'm surprised by my own slides. We do have some open positions, and we are actually going to be working on a nominating committee. If you are interested in joining, being on the nominating committee, please reach out to me directly. You can do that at president@seattlespecialeducationptsa.org. And if you are interested in joining our work and being on our board next year, you can reach out to me, or you can connect with us on Facebook. Oops, I was going to go back one. Now we're just rocking through here, guys. Okay, so just the different committees that we have: inclusionary practices, restraint and isolation, and dyslexia. Those are 3 big topics we work on. And then our other family and community engagement committee, which is open at the moment, legislative advocacy, communications, membership, fundraising, and racial equity and inclusion. Okay, with that, we are right about 7:10. I will ask Dr. Stewart, and actually if somebody could pin Dr. Stewart so that we can see her. There we go. Thank you. Appreciate you showing up, Dr. Stewart. Just a little background. I was communicating with Devin over spring break. I didn't have a whole lot of spring break. I got a kid who had knee surgery, and so we've been catching up. So I appreciate that that you could join us and give a little update from the district, as well as take some questions. Okay, take it away. Thank you.
Sure. Sherilyn, thank you for having me. So I did get this information from Devin a little bit earlier today, so I don't know if there are specific questions that you all might have that you may, I think there was a question about job postings and extended resource. Can you confirm that this is the only things you would like for me to speak to today?
Well, there were several questions we have kind of been working with. This is Sherilyn, sorry, this is Sherilyn speaking. The question on the job postings, we'd heard from a teacher concerned about the very short window of time. I think it's 6 days that job positions are posted. Another also brought up an issue with about a retired teacher who was looking to become a certificated substitute and was looking when that would be posted, because that's not open yet. And having just touched base with the teachers union, that is the posting window is something that they've been concerned about too. And I think many of us, if not all of us, have had the experience of knowing open but unfilled positions. So that was one issue. Definitely the questions around recovery services and summer programs, what opportunities might be coming up. Another thing, and I don't know that you're going to be able to speak to this, is the rollout of extended resource next fall. I will say that from what we're hearing, very few people are aware of what is going to be a significant change in how some special education services are delivered. So those are 3 that I had gathered. And then if we have an opportunity to hear from other people who have questions.
Sure. And to my understanding, I have a 15-minute time frame. So I'm going to try to stick to that as best as possible.
Thanks.
So I guess I can start with, and this is Ivory, job postings. You are correct that job postings can usually stay open between a minimum of 5 to 7 days. So certificated career letter positions are posted internally, but there are some exceptions where we post those positions externally. However, all other positions are posted both internally and externally. I can't answer the question as to why some positions stay open longer than others, or why someone might apply or look into and find a position and might not see it later. But what I can do is reach out to my HR business partner and get a bit more information on just the process of when jobs are posted and, the whole nine, and I can bring that back to you, Sherilyn, so that you can share with the group. Does that sound okay?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Recovery services. So we are expecting to host our last year of recovery services this summer. We all have been providing recovery services throughout the school year. During breaks, we did a fall break, winter break, midwinter break, and also spring break. And we will also be serving recovery services this summer. We have not yet identified the sites for recovery services. What we are currently doing is looking at our recovery services applications and our ESY applications to determine school sites, staffing, and how many students we're looking to serve this summer. So we'll have a bit more of information towards the end of this month regarding sites for recovery services. We have not had a very large amount of recovery services recommendations this year. But if you, as a parent, have a student that you are concerned about and you think that there is some concern stemming from COVID and there's evidence of regression from the closure, definitely reach out to your case manager and schedule an IEP team meeting so that the team can discuss recovery service opportunities for your student. Summer programming. Summer programming is going to be pretty big this summer, but I'm going to stick to ESY. So we are planning ESY this summer. I think the days, excuse me, let me pull up my calendar here. July 10th through August the 4th is what we're looking at, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And we're looking at adding sites to each region. But there is also summer programming for students who may not be as heavily impacted, who could access their regular gen ed summer programming. So there's elementary summer of learning, which has K4 reading. Let me slow down, I apologize. K4 reading, math, SEL and enrichment. Also middle school summer of learning, summer music, skill center summers courses, and credit recovery through Apex learning, in addition to special education ESY. ESSER funds. Was that a topic, Sherilyn? ESSER funds, recovery services? Oh, we already talked about that. Oh, rollout of extended resource. Right now, we are currently wrapping up our guidance documents for teachers and administrators. What we are really hoping to have is just some really robust information for building leaders and teachers. And those guidance documents just include what is extended resource? How can you create a building schedule that reflects more inclusionary practices? What does a teacher schedule for extended resource look like? And just a couple of other things. And so as we flesh those guidance documents out and we get that information out to building leaders and teachers, I will make sure that we also create a presentation for families, because I do understand that there has been some confusion about what extended resource really is. And it is the merging of access and SEL. And I know there's been questions and concerns about what does that really look like in a building with two programs, with an access and an SEL program, or in a building with just access, or a building with just SEL. To my understanding, there are about 40 schools that will be impacted by the extended resource merger, and we are working closely with those schools. We have a team of supervisors, a team of program specialists that are working closely with those schools to ensure that there is as smooth as can be as possible transition into the extended resource pathway.
Is there some community outreach planning? Do you know, is there work that's being done to, continue to get the word out? Or if there are going to be some engagements, even at the beginning of the next school year?
Yes, and so we are working with Sophia Charchek. She's our communications specialist, and she's working with us to get some communications out to families over the next month. We did send one flyer out, and I know that it wasn't as robust. It didn't give a lot of information. It just kind of gave an overview of what this program or pathway could look like, and who is impacted by the pathway. So right now, it's going to take a little bit longer than we expected to flesh out as much information as possible to school teams. But what we can do is make sure that we get a presentation together for you guys and get Sophia to get that information out to you after we get those guidance documents created for our building leaders and teachers. I believe I saw another question in the chat.
Well, I'm also going to ask, did the flyer go out in multiple languages, or is that just standard procedure?
Yes, to my understanding, yes. So when Sophia creates our flyers and any communication that we send out to families, it goes through a vetting process and it is included in all languages. And the first flyer went out, I believe, in the fall.
Okay. I'm both writing a note. Let's see. So what other questions? Well, we have, how is extended resource more inclusive? My school community is highly anxious about this, almost in panic.
Absolutely. And so the whole purpose of the extended resource pathway is to ensure that we give opportunities for all of our students to have as much time in general education as possible, in their general education classrooms as possible. I do want to make sure that we are communicating heavily that this is based on individual student needs. And while we are always pushing for more inclusionary practices, we always want to do what's in the best interest of students. So I do know that there has been concern about, well, what if my student or my child isn't ready for more time in gen ed? So if you have a student that's LRE1 and 80 to 90% in gen ed, or if you have a student that is LRE3 that is 0 to 39% in gen ed, how can we plan to increase general education time for these students? And this is where our guidance documents kind of lays that out for school teams. What does that meeting look like? What data are we looking at to make these types of decisions? Because sometimes there are students that can benefit from more time in gen ed, and there are sometimes where students just need a little more time getting there. But the goal is increased time in gen ed.
Okay. Are there other questions if people want to ask a question directly? Oh, this is Cheryl Lynn. And I'm going to ask if one of the board members, is there a question on the Padlets that we've seen? I don't have it up handy right now. Oh, Yana, go ahead.
This is Yana. I'm sorry, I joined late, so I don't see the Padlet link in the chat. So if we could repeat that, maybe that would be great. And hello, thank you for being here. I just have a question about, it seems like it's extremely difficult to get any information about summer programming from teams, from school teams. And we are planning, or most families have to plan their summer in February. And considering that it's almost the end of April, this is really repeated problem for families every single year. And it almost feels intentional. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that this is almost a deterrent for families to not ask, because quite frankly, we get exhausted by having to ask and ask, and school teams don't know. If they don't know, then parents don't know, and not knowing is what causes the anxiety and the, difficult times among school teams or the IEP teams, right? So I just wonder if we could kind of get a pretty reasonable estimate of when we will be able to have information, because we only reach some families in the district. I think it would seem appropriate to have an information about summer programming already in my inbox and in everyone's inbox, not just because we are here, we are hearing and we know to ask. I guess I would like to hear some kind of date and commitment to inform families so that they know, not that they are coming to our programming saying, do you know, and they're waiting. They need the support to be provided and offered actively, right? So if there's any way to do that by certain date, that would be appreciated.
Hi, Anna. This is Ivory. Thank you for saying that. And so, to my understanding, we did things a little bit different this year with summer planning. Usually special education does our own siloed work because we have our ESY and recovery services and things like that we have to plan for. But this year, every department was working together collaboratively to plan for summer services and summer programming. And so to my understanding, there has been just like continuous communication that has gone to school buildings and, to my understanding, families. So Yana, I'm so sorry that there's groups of folks who have not received any information regarding summer services. So what I can do is, while we're working on right now a family communicator that's going to go out here in the next couple of weeks, I can include regular summer programming information as well as special education summer programming information, and maybe that'll be helpful for families who will receive the newsletter coming directly from special education.
This is Yana. Thank you. So is this going to all families, all families of students with disabilities with IEPs?
Yes, our newsletter goes to all families of students with disabilities.
Okay, so you said, I'm sorry, did you say within?
So within the next few weeks, I have to work with Sophia to get it vetted, to make sure that the language is appropriate, to make sure that it's provided in different languages as well. So it takes a couple of weeks, and we are working on it this week.
Great. So do you think, and I'm sorry to keep pushing, but do you think it would be out by the end of the month? It's the 18th now.
It's possible, Yana. I don't want to make any promises. It's very
Okay.
possible.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anna?
Hi, Ivory. I just had a question about Devin Gurley shared with us at a recent meeting that there was going to be an offering for schools to opt into inclusionary practices PD that teacher leaders would get trained in, and then the whole school would get trained in. And that sounded like a really exciting opportunity especially for schools doing the extended resource. I haven't been able to get any other information about it, and my school, none of the other schools I'm in contact with have heard about it. So I wondered if there was what is it actually called? Where is it listed on the SPS website? And how can I get info about it out to my schools?
Okay, so this is Ivory speaking again. There's a couple of inclusionary projects that the district is working on. I think the one you might be referencing is the Inclusionary Practices Project. And Devin Gurley, our executive director, is working closely on that one with another team. And I unfortunately have not been involved in that one. However, we also are doing universal design for learning rollout, and all administrators across the district are getting the same training, same sessions every other Friday, and are able to take all of that information back to their buildings. So every school is getting UDL training. But in terms of the Inclusionary Practices Project, I do not have that information, but I can run it by Devin and see if she can get that information over to you.
Yes, please. That would be great. Thank you.
No problem.
That's good. And I think that's, I want to do some respect on time. We did have a question. Hi, this is Cheryl Lynn, guilting myself. Summer offerings were too fast for me to follow. Are they listed somewhere? And then the summer school listing on the website it's you know what, actually, I'm just going to share and see if this is the best resource. I'll also add that when it comes to communication, it's definitely one of those things where it probably takes way more than it seems like it might for the message to come through. Am I sharing this? I'm sharing a screen, right? So this is on the website. Is this a good resource for all of the stuff that you just listed?
Yes.
Okay. So that is what was in the chat. Yeah, okay, great. And we'll share this out again.
And this is Ivory. I saw that the question was also, will IA support be provided at any locations? Yes, absolutely. We already have a pool of applications open, and I instructional assistance is one of the pools, and we have many, many applicants, and we are excited about that.
Then I see one other question in chat. What is the procedure when this is Cheryl Lynn. What is the procedure when a special education classroom is unsafe due to ongoing unfilled staffing positions? Is there a point where the classroom will close as a school would if there was a safety threat? Years-long unfilled special education positions in SPS leading to staff assault was cited by a Seattle senator as his reason for killing the Restraint and Isolation Bill, House Bill 1479.
I was trying to follow along with you. Is this on the Padlet or is it in the chat?
It was anonymous to me. But I can, I will share some of it so I don't have a name.
Thank you.
And
it is in the Padlet as well.
Great question. So I don't believe that we would typically close a classroom. We are constantly and always looking to hire certificated special education teachers. In the event there isn't a teacher, and I think many of you already know this, we utilize the sub pool, we utilize teachers that are in the building, and we do acknowledge that there are times where there are shortages and, you know, things that are going on in the building that require extra support, which is why we also send in our program specialists and our supervisors who support classrooms and teachers who are really struggling in their unsafe environments. I cannot say whether or not we would close a classroom as they would a school. I would think not. I would think that, you know, we would continue to look for highly qualified staffing to support the building and the classroom. The only times that, to my knowledge, and I've only been in the district for a couple of years and there's still a lot to learn here. Seattle is very big and things are always constantly changing here. But from my current knowledge, classrooms will close if there isn't a number of students to fill the slot. So if, let's say we have a SEL classroom, but there's only 2 SEL students in that building, then those are the times where we would say, okay, well, this classroom will probably need to close and we might need to look at other options for these students.
it's I hear what you're saying, and I can think of personal examples where I know, you know, stuff went unfilled. This is Cheryl Lynn. I'm usually better than this. This is Cheryl Lynn. I can think of examples that I know of, and I will say that some of that was during COVID times. But it's not new to COVID schooling times. It's an ongoing issue. Is there any other questions? Otherwise, we appreciate Dr. Stewart giving us extra amount of time here to go through things.
I had a question. This is Yana. I had a question sent to me anonymously, and that is actually pertains to school counseling, school counselors. It seems like the question, if I'm understanding it correctly, is that there's a school with high need, which one isn't, that only has 0.6 counselor and has nearly 500 students, and or I think 400 and something, I don't know. And so I'm wondering if the district is looking at the need of the students as opposed to the numbers of students, because when you look at certain schools, and I know this from my school as well, one of my schools, we have almost quarter of the student body with our students with disabilities. And so it just kind of seems inadequate, and as seen from the bullying going around, I guess, things to deal with. So I wonder if the district is having, I don't know if I got the information that I was sent to me. I'm summarizing. So if there is a way for us to see more supports going to the schools as they towards counselors, counseling, social workers, because it seems like that is not a sufficient support, especially after the pandemic. A lot of our families report that their students have not recovered yet.
Sorry, I lost my screen there. So thank you for that question. Unfortunately, I do not work with counselors. I do know that the ratio for counselors, I believe, is 1 to every 500 students or so. And I believe that's is it a 0.0 or 1 second? I believe it is a 1.0 for tier 2 to elementary schools is 500 students. And you will have a 1.0 school counselor there. So Yana, it sounds like what I'm hearing is there's 500 students, but there's only a 0.5 counselor, 500 or more students.
So my information was that it used to be 500, now it's under 500, but the need is there because of the student population need. The school's individual need isn't met through the ratios.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm asking. I guess the support, I do know from families that they say, okay, my kid now has so much more sensory sensitivities. They need more OT, and the OT is saying, I don't have time on my schedule. So that's how services are denied when the OT is in the school, or SLP or PT are in the school for just 3 or 2 days a week, right? So I guess the need doesn't seem to be covered by the current ratios. And so I wonder if there is any way, any plan to address that.
I don't think we can, do anything to address the current ratios, but what I will say is we have been typically, I cannot speak for the counselor group. That is not a group that I work with. And you would probably have to reach out to maybe Tara McFarland or someone who works directly with counselors that can respond to that specific question. But in terms of our ESAs, we're well aware that they are working hard in buildings, and sometimes there's just not enough time to just make sure you get to everyone. And I really do hope that all of our students are being serviced based on whatever their service matrices say that they need. What I will say is that right now we have been lucky enough to hire, because we have been short-staffed in just about every ESA area. And we've started hiring about a month ago, and we've sent out lots of offers for next school year, and we're hoping to be fully staffed in terms of OTs, PTs, SOPs, and school psychologists. That is our hope. That is our goal. Yeah, So, hopefully, next year there won't be as a tough strain on ESAs to get the work done, especially if we have more the amount of ESAs that we need per building.
This is Cheryl Lynn. Thank you, Dr. Stewart, again, and appreciate the time. And I think some of our questions are new and some of our questions will keep coming up.
Absolutely.
Our issues with the structure as a whole. Okay, thank you, appreciate it. And
Thank you all.
your team.
Sherilyn,
Cheryl,
I
you
have my
one more hand raised. I'm sorry.
I would, okay,
Laura.
okay. Laura, yes, go ahead, Laura.
Last. Thank you for
Last
hanging out.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Laura. My son has who's in a focus program, hasn't had a teacher since November. And I'm curious what we're doing at a district level to attract talent and to retain talent as far as special ed teachers. We know that there is a shortage of qualified teachers, not just in Seattle, but how are we incentivizing talented teachers to come work here instead of neighboring districts, for example?
Well, we have been attending hiring fairs. We've gone to Tacoma. Of course, we had our hiring fair at the district maybe like a month ago, and we are constantly, as a department, planning with our HR business partners to find out where there are other career fairs happening across the state, so that we can, gain new teachers or show them what Seattle's working with and bring them our way. Seattle has a lot to offer. And unfortunately, the pandemic put a really big strain on educators, but also, training and development plays a role in that as well. And that's something that we're really focusing on right now, is ensuring that we're preparing a really robust summer training session for educators, especially our new educators in the district, because what we have found is newer educators tend to not return. The teacher turnover rate is really bad all over the place, not just Seattle. And so we've been planning a really robust summer instructional institute, not just for special education teachers, but for general education teachers. And we're already planning out our professional development for next school year, because we don't want to miss any opportunities to work closely with teachers.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thanks. Up next, we're going to turn to Yana to talk about our legislative advocacy work. Is that Yana, you're muted.
Of course I am. Somebody has to be each meeting, right? So, hi, this is Yana, and I am a VP and Legislative Advocacy Committee Chair. And we're just gonna, if somebody could run the slides, that would be much appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I just have a couple of pages, and I'm gonna do fairly brief update. We have meeting, Legislative Advocacy Committee meeting. We moved it to 7 o'clock this Thursday. This is going to be our last meeting before the end of the session. The session ends on April 23rd. Just for information, the cutoff date for bills to pass out of the opposite chamber, they start in one chamber and then they go pass through one and then they go into the other chamber. So the last date was April 12th. Basically what we're looking at right now is that the bills that passed, and they're still passing, but the bills that are passing now are waiting to be signed by the governor. And then the governor signs them into the law. And that should be done by May 13th. And we have a number of bills that we want to celebrate. One of the first ones to pass legislature was House Bill 1222 that requires coverage of hearing aids, which we're super excited about. And then there is the bill that's second substitute House Bill 1550, which establishes program to help children in need of additional preparation to be successful in transition to kindergarten, which is really exciting. I almost wish we had an incoming kindergartner. No, not really. But then we have House Bill 1238 that started off really nice, providing breakfast and lunch to any student, and it ended up being stripped, but let's call it success. Free breakfast and lunch to any kindergarten through 4th grade student that requests it. Not just free and reduced lunch eligible students. And then we have bills that are funding bills or were funding bills, such as House Bill 1436 that intended to provide full special education funding, remove the cap that's really illegal, right? So unfortunately, that bill got pretty much stripped, and the only thing that it includes right now is audit, which you can tell that there's very little trust of school districts from legislators. And I'm not going to say it's unfounded, but then there is a bill that's Senate Bill 5311 that still keeps the cap, but lifts it to 15%. And it was it does raise the special education funding multiplier some. Let's say it brings more funding to school districts, but it definitely doesn't fully fund special education. Does not even come close. So I'm still gonna call it success, just to be really positive. And we're being told that this is a down payment on fully funded education. So we'll see what happens. That there's supposedly going to be phased in funding to full funding for full cost, but our 7th graders, they're going to miss it because that's going to take 4 years. Yeah.
I see we have, this is Sherilyn. We have a hand raised. I'm not sure if that's a question.
Go ahead. Oh yeah, I just lost my screen, but go right ahead.
Yes. You said that, can you talk about 1436 and 5311 a little bit again, what you were saying? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I'm going to try. So 1436 was sponsored by Representative Paulette, and he's our champion for special education legislation. And originally it started off with requiring fully funded education, right? And it ended up being stripped, and some of the stuff that was in that bill moved over to the Senate bill. That's 5311. The prime sponsor was Senator Wellman, who chairs the Senate Education Committee, Early Learning and K through 12 Education Committee. And so we're now, they did pass both houses. So we're just kind of hoping to get those in place. And I don't know, do you have any specific questions?
Oh, you talked about how bad, you talked about what it got, what was it that stayed in both bills, as you mentioned that they both got stripped down?
Yeah, so it fully funded, originally the 1436 fully funded education of disabled children who qualify for special education services, right? Well, that cap removal, unfortunately, even though we've heard from a lot of legislators that that's what they're going to advocate for, that didn't happen. The cap got raised to 15%. And even that was it's going to be gradual. So I guess at this moment, the bill kind of changes all throughout the legislative process. And at the moment, the cap is 13.5% of all students enrolled in the district, regardless of how many students are actually in need of special education services. So that cap is being lifted to 15%. It's a little bit more money. We still have to, we're being told that this is a down payment on fully funded education. We do have pretty regressive tax system in Washington. So it is difficult for supposedly, I mean, I guess it is difficult to figure out where the money's coming from, but that is what the McCleary lawsuit in 2011 went through and required Washington State Legislature to do tax reform, and they have failed. So I guess we're going to get more money from these two bills. We're going to get some accountability in form of the audit, but we're not going to get fully funded education for disabled students who qualify for IEPs. That's because a lot of districts in Washington have far more than 13.5% of student enrollment who need special education services. In Seattle, in January, I believe that was it 18%? In the fall, I know it was 15.5. So we're constantly asking school districts to fund and pay for services our students need, but the state isn't paying for it. So I hope that answered it. I know this is depressing. That's why I'm celebrating it, but you know, it's kind of, it's a step, I guess. Yeah. Any other question, Tariq? Did that answer?
This is Sherilyn. I'll also just say what's going on in the chat. I was saying that the full funding is really at the base. It's about basic education, includes all students and students who have disabilities, who have, maybe there's some increased costs for them. Then we need to have their basic education covered. And we're not there yet. We're making progress, is what Yana is saying. And then Karen raises a great question. Does this have something to do why schools discourage IEPs? There is an inherent conflict of interest. And part of this is if you have an unfunded mandate, you are mandated to make sure you provide coverage and services and the right kind, a basic education, and yet the state doesn't fund it. It's almost a given that that while money is not supposed to be the issue, it has to be. So, and actually, if I can, I will ask School Board Director Liza Rankin to join.
So if I may, let's finish this slide. I absolutely want Director Rankin to pitch in here. I do want to just say mention one other bill, which I know that a lot of our children, including my own with ADHD, will appreciate, or the families will appreciate it, and the teachers, is Senate Bill 5257 that requires elementary school recess to be at least 30 minutes a day. And that one just passed today and passed the chamber today, and it's waiting to be delivered to the governor. So yeah, we have one more slide, but Director Rankin, where are you? Do you have anything to add before we get to the losses?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I started getting not snarky, but sassy, I guess, in the chat, because I'm just mad, but not at you, Yana. What is there anything specific anybody wants me to? Well, so basically, the foundational problem that exists is that the way that our state collects revenue isn't connected at all. Like, we do this very weird thing where in other states, income tax and other state income is what funds basic education costs. And then property tax is what local levels of government can use for levies. In our state, we don't have an income tax, so property tax is the vehicle for everything. And the plus on property tax, it is very stable, reliable source of revenue. It's not very equitable, and it will never be ample. So just like any other kind of, investment or financial planning, diversification is good. We have really poor diversification of revenue in Washington state, and it's highly regressive. So the lowest income residents of our state pay the highest percentage of their taxes than in any other state in the country. And so that's already setting us up for inadequate income or inadequate revenue for the state. Then, so our state, to fund McCleary, magically found more state money by actually increasing a property tax levy on King County and making that into state money. Is, oh, now we have all this state money. But if we keep doing that, and there was a new property tax bill that came up right at the end here and has already died, to allow more property tax revenue to be collected. But the problem that a lot of people are having with that, or a lot of districts are having, is, then if the state's going to collect more revenue from local property taxes, then when districts go out to ask for their levies, the average person isn't going to know that the state has been collecting that money. They're just going to know our taxes got raised for schools, and now you're asking me for another school levy from the same bucket, which is property tax. So anyway, it's a whole big mess. So that's already inequitable. And then the two funding bills that came up this session that Yana already talked about, 1436 and 5311. 1436 originally was like the dream. It had the whole package, it had everything, and it cost way more money than anybody was going to be willing to invest this session. But it actually covered the cost of what districts now spend, which again is not connected to the cost of actual services. The formula that allocates funding out to districts is from the state is just based on the number of students that have IEPs. And as you all, I'm sure, know, an IEP could be very minimal intervention and support to a full-time one-to-one aid. Huge difference in the amount of cost from IEP to IEP, but the state funding formula has, you have an IEP or this many kids with IEPs, you get this much money per IEP, and you figure out how to allocate it all. It has nothing to do with how much it actually costs districts to provide those services. And it has nothing to do with even any kind of state recognition of what practices produce better outcomes for students. It's not connected to that at all. It's simply, you have this many IEPs, you get this much IEP money. There you go ahead. And then as Yana was talking about the cap, we're one of just a handful of states that have a cap at all, because IDEA is federal law. If a student qualifies for an IEP, that's a federal right to services in order to access basic education. And so our state is saying only, first come, first serve. This many kids with an IEP will support their access to general education. But if you have more than that, we won't. As if districts are arbitrarily handing out IEPs. I mean, as I'm sure everyone on this call knows, it is not easy to get an IEP. You don't just ask for one and get one. You qualify for it, and you can have a disability and not qualify for an IEP, because it all depends on your access to education. Anyway, It's all garbage. It's all garbage and annoying. And but the two funding bills now, it kind of doesn't matter what the bill number is, only one's the vehicle. And I think it's actually 1436 is ending up being the vehicle. But when it was being looked at in the Senate basically posed a substitute bill with the Senate bill language and amounts in it. So it's the 5311 didn't make it actually out of the House. Or there was no, I can't remember what they call it. Basically no agreement on it. And so 1436 made it out of the Senate, but the Senate substituted in their bill. Ideally, when the bills pass back and forth is when people would have like actual conversations and negotiations around how much to fund what bill, but they each just substituted their own bill for that. It's like, so the best outcome would be for the bill to get through the budget arena of everybody arguing over whose budget they're going to fund, because the Senate budget and the House budget proposals are pretty far apart from each other. And what they're doing now until the end of the session is fighting over how to make one budget to submit to the governor. So best case scenario, they will pass what was in the Senate bill, which is raising the cap to 15%, and Seattle's now at 15.2 or 16%.
I think January.
Increasing the multiplier to a level that will help districts out a lot and not cover the cost of providing special education.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Director. This is Yana. So I just want to add one more thing, and I think we're kind of starting to fall behind a little bit, but I do appreciate you diving in.
Apologies, I took
No,
a
no.
lot of time to get through.
No, it's good. I think there's one reminder. We're now waiting for the budget to be agreed upon, in which there's a huge discrepancy. So what you can do is to call and contact your legislators and just request fully funded education. I would say I'm not going to bet my anything on it, but I recommend to still don't give up and contact your legislators. I will try to put, or unless someone can put the link, find the district finder in the chat, that would be great. And just write to them, fully fund education, comment on the bills. We have links on our website in different blog posts. So just have fun with that. And I think one more big one is that levies are supposed to fund extra, right? Anything extra that's supposed to not fund basic education, but that is what we are doing. And there is a bill that dropped recently that seems to, it is sponsored by Senator Peterson. And it appears to be going back to funding, raising a property tax and how much we can, removing the cap from how much we can spend on education from property taxes. To me personally, it sounds like what we just got rid of, but I'm going to try to kind of dive more in and read up some more. I'm going to try to get that link in there. So
that's the bill that died. That bill died.
It just got dropped. So it's basically going to
it will likely come back next session.
It's going to come back. I don't know who's speaking.
Sorry, this is Liza. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so it was just dropped. So keep an eye on it. I already commented on it twice because I wasn't sure if I did, and I did. Anyway, so I recommend let your legislators know that this is not okay. Just raise the income tax. Come on now. Anyway, so we do have to move on. I kind of went through looking ahead, and I'm gonna save the worst for last. So we had 3 bills that died in this session that are kind of, I would say it's been heartbreaking. This was a very difficult session. It's the House Bill 1541, Nothing About Us Without Us Act, which would require representation on state committees and work groups and advisory committees that report to legislature that are related to issues directly and affecting underrepresented population. This includes people with disabilities, and that died, unfortunately, but it almost made it. And so we're kind of mourning that one. And then we have a couple more bills. That is House Bill 1305 that started off as addressing the long special education evaluation timelines. And it ended up right before it died, it ended up shortening the evaluation timelines to 17 calendar days, as opposed to 25 school days, which, as you know, could be 6 weeks or 8 weeks even. It also included accommodations for families, or parents with disabilities, like recording of meetings, and as well as language access, requiring school districts to provide skilled interpreters, that are specifically trained in special education issues, and also no more Google Translate. Because then you can't if you don't have good information to start with, you can't really make informed decisions. So that one it had a few more items in it. And I will say, I think that Director Rankin called it the kitchen sink, and I totally happily adapted that. That's the bill that was the kitchen sink. And I know for many families that was, I had people reaching out to me with great sadness. But don't worry, next year, the bills that died in committee are coming back next session. I know we need it now, but. And then the saddest, I think, when we think about safety of our children, is the House Bill 1479 pertaining to restraint and isolation, which would ban restraint. Ban isolation and certain kinds of restraint. It would provide targeted professional development and supports to reach students before they are in crisis. It would have provided, it would have allowed us to avoid the need for practices like restraint and isolation, and it would improve school climate and learning for all students. So, that is kind of a sad closure, but I'm gonna, I guess, say, make sure that you are active, you get involved, you schedule appointments or meetings with your legislators and explain to them why these are necessities. These are not extras. These are not optional. Civil rights of students with disabilities are legal, and that's a legal obligation of the district and of the state, and they are here to deliver those rights, make sure that laws are being followed and our children are safe and have equitable access to education. So please contact your legislators, invite them to various meetings, go and speak up, and that's